Recently, I sent out a LinkedIn post asking people what e-commerce brands should be focusing on over the next 12 months. I was a little surprised at the results. Some of the options were PPC and social, customer experience, conversion rate optimization, retention, and loyalty. It was surprising to see PPC and paid social being lower on that list, or pretty much the bottom of all of those things that we asked. So David and I broke down why e-commerce brands should be focusing on some of those other aspects where paid social and paid search are not as important, although it should be, of course, part of your omni-channel e-commerce goals. It's something that is not as important as it was a couple years ago. So in this episode, we dove into that question.
This episode is sponsored by Gorgias. Gorgias is the #1 e-commerce help desk that lets you manage and respond to messages from your site, social, email, and SMS all in one platform. They have built-in automations to handle common queries like order tracking and save your team time and money. Get a free month by clicking the link in the description and elevate your customer experience today.
You're listening to the Agency X podcast. I'm your host, John Sertikowski, founder and CEO at Avex, a New York City-based e-commerce agency for high-growth D2C brands. As always, I'm joined by our e-commerce strategist, David Anzalone. Our goal is to provide some insight into e-commerce, technology, design, and everything in between. Let us know what you think of today's episode and make sure to visit our website, avexdesigns.com. Welcome to the Agency X podcast. I'm your host, John Sertikowski, founder at Avex, and as always, joined by David Anzalone. How's it going, David?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm
Good.
Thriving right now.
You got a new camera?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
I just have a camera that works right now.
Oh, okay. Well, the quality looks better. I don't know if it's lighting or it's just working, but it's
I think it's
better.
lighting, because there's a sunroof that's right above me where it's the perfect combination of either the clouds or where the sun is in the sky. So no, just everything's working right now.
It's the what do photographers or videographers call it? It's the oh, I forgot. There's like a special term for like the best hour of the day for
the
video.
Isn't that like the golden hour?
The golden hour, yeah. We have to do it at this time every week now. I have no windows right now. There's some windows that way, but this is all fake lighting above me. I didn't intentionally put it there. It just happens to be in this room. Okay, great. So I sent out a LinkedIn poll, which apparently are like really popular, and they get a lot of traction on LinkedIn, but half the people are sick of them, and I'm kind of late to the game. I mean, I got a bunch of votes on it, but I didn't see anything astronomical, and I thought my question was pretty cool. But we got some really good insights on what e-commerce brands. Well, the actual question was directed towards e-commerce brands, asking what will be most important to your growth over the next 12 months. And I want to say that I'll share the results first, and then we could kind of talk through these individually, because, and this was David's idea to talk about this, because it's kind of a hot topic right now. But it's all four of these things are important to e-commerce brands. I want to say that I'm not shocked at the results, but I'm actually shocked that one of them is as low as it is. So let me kind of go through it of what's most important to e-commerce brands over the next 12 months. So the options were PPC and social, reducing customer acquisition costs. The next one was conversion rate optimization, followed by loyalty and retention, and after that, customer experience. Now, PPC and social got 9% of the votes. And if I would have asked that question a few years ago, I feel like it would have been astronomically higher, especially even a year ago. It would have been higher. The next ones up were customer experience, followed by conversion rate optimization, and then the biggest one being loyalty and retention, which we'll get to in a bit. But I'd like to talk a little bit about why PPC is not as much of a priority over the next 12 months and in the future. And I do believe that all of these things are important for e-commerce brands to focus on, as far as creating a real omni-channel experience and just a more holistic approach. All of these things are important, but I think it's I wouldn't say it's evidence because it's a LinkedIn poll, but I think it's becoming more and more apparent that paid social, paid search is just something that you kind of have to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be all of what you do. More and more brands are realizing that retaining current customers and optimizing your site and your email marketing and just focusing on customer experience and your brand as a whole is more important than just putting out ads to win new customers. So plus with the new cookie and privacy and iOS updates, which we've recently touched on a bit on a previous podcast, you're spending more and more on ads and it's having less of an impact. So brands won't think twice of spending 10, 20, 100,000 or more a month or hundreds of thousands a month on ads, but they won't focus on loyalty and retention, or they'll balk at a CRO campaign or A/B testing and things like that they could optimize for their current customers. So I think that's one of the reasons why PPC doesn't have as much of is not ranking as high as it would a couple years ago. You have any thoughts on that, David?
Sure. And first off, do you, off the top of your head, do you know how many people responded to this question, like the sample size of it?
I don't, but I could look it up.
Because I'd be curious about that. The second thing, before I kind of give my thoughts on it, I'd also be interested to see in the future, if you ran this poll, if you like labeled the type of brands, because of course e-commerce brands, there's so many different kinds. And if you asked, a brand that started maybe like a month ago, specifically PPC social is probably going to be the most important thing over the next 12 months, because when you're just starting, and assuming you're not a brand like, Metal Umbrella, which we recently launched, all of their traffic was driven through organic and owned channels on social, because the founders of the brand have such a huge presence. But, most brands don't have that luxury, and, that's what they'd be focusing on most. But, I think when looking at the activities that the people who own or manage a brand, I mean, you think about like a founder of a D2C brand, the paid aspect of it is probably, if I had to guess, unless the founder specifically had a background in this, I'm sure they're the most uninterested in being super involved with PPC and social, because if you look at, the list that you mentioned, it's the item on the list that has the least to do with the brand's individuality. It's probably a reason why most brands choose to outsource this activity, because it's, not only very technical, but it doesn't really speak too much to like the brand's identity in a sense of growth. It's almost a I don't want to say necessary evil, because it's not like they're inherently evil, but I think if you had to ask all brands if you could make the same amount of money and not engage in it at all, I'm sure everyone would say yes, because no one really wants to have to run ads. The more you own your own channels and your customers, not only does that directly reflect on the power of your brand, which is a good benchmark of that, but you also don't have to spend as much. But it's interesting that reducing customer acquisition cost, which you have as a parenthesis on that task, is even factoring that in is lower, because you would think a lot of brands would want to focus on lowering their customer acquisition cost overall, but I think it's less that PPC and social is less important to these brands, and more that like loyalty and retention is just more important. Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but just browsing on LinkedIn, it seems lately loyalty and retention has become like a hot topic. I mean, it's never not a hot topic because of what it is, but I feel like you know how it is in like these social platforms. One person says something and then everyone kind of hops in on the bandwagon of that topic. And I
Yeah.
feel like lately, loyalty retention, I feel like I hear it everywhere more than I did before. So I think that's just what a lot of people, I think it's just becoming more important. And I'm curious if you think the pandemic might have an influence on why it's so high and why PPC is so low.
Well, I think we're starting to see a shift in general, and there's also two different crowds that we're listening to. So like when it's on social platforms and or when we're talking to colleagues and things like that, I do think that practitioners, marketers, agencies, consultants have been talking about loyalty and retention for quite a while as that being something that is more important than winning new customers, because honestly, that's what's going to lower your cost of your acquiring new customers. But I do think that brands, when they think about loyalty, it's something that they want to achieve when they're trying to build a community and build loyal customers. They don't necessarily know how. And also a lot of times they'll say they want to do loyalty or create a loyalty program, and essentially they're just like plugging in Loyalty Lion or Swell or something like that, and not really focusing on how it's going to benefit the customer. And that also ties into customer experience. I do think that just in general, Facebook is extremely expensive. Instagram is very expensive, and it's difficult. You know, it's really hard. You do need to have an agency for it. People do learn how to do it on their own, but not only is there the cost of the actual ad spend and possibly even paying someone to do it, but you have to create great content too. If you're able to create amazing content and amazing copy, and you have an organic reach and you're able to build that organic reach, that's going to be a much better investment. Because let's just say you get someone to buy your product from an ad and they come to your site, you got them, you had to pay for them first of all, and then you don't necessarily retain them if you're not focusing on a really good customer experience, not focusing on customer retention and loyalty, and not optimizing your site for conversions. So I do think those other things are a lot more important. PPC and social do need to play a part in your e-commerce goals and in your marketing plans. But there's more of that shift of like brands are starting to focus more on saying, well, let's make our customers happy. Let's try to build a community. Especially the smaller brands are starting off with retention and loyalty as being extremely important to them from the beginning. And maybe it takes a little bit longer to grow, but you're able to build that community and have loyal customers. Like, I'd rather have a small group of loyal customers that are consistently buying from me than always trying to acquire new customers and having to keep dumping money into it. It helps your margins. It's easier to manage. It's more fun. You're able to put out really great content and do different things and focus on building your brand rather than focus on who we could target better. But I think the major driver of this is going to be the changes happening on Google, happening with Apple and with Facebook and Instagram, where it's really expensive. It's harder to track. It's harder to see who's coming from those ads. It's going to get even harder with all of the privacy things. So I think brands are starting to feel that, and they're starting to shift a little bit more towards other things outside of PPC and social. Did the pandemic play a role in that? I feel like it played a role in everything in our lives.
Yeah,
so probably in some capacity. I do think that customers are starting to get more knowledgeable and a little bit, just like where there's been ad blockers, or people stopped looking at commercials, or people stopped looking at larger ads on like a blog or something like that. I do think people are scrolling past their screen and they know that like every fourth post on like an Instagram is going to be an ad. And unless it's something that they're really interested in and the targeting is done really well, they're not going to stop scrolling. And I think that's where, companies like Apple with their privacy and not being able to track people as much if brands aren't able to target customers with the right ads, then you're gonna get crappy ads. And I've seen some people posting on Twitter saying, "Damn, I'm ready to turn off that privacy control because the ads that Instagram are serving me are crap." So I think people are kind of, they know what's going on there. One thing I wish I would have put in there is influencer marketing, because I do think that would have maybe even beat out retention and loyalty or become very close. But LinkedIn only allows me to put 4 things.
Yeah, so I think, the power, and I think influencer marketing, especially with this, is I see it at this point as more about an awareness driver than a revenue driver, and even staying competitive, because as a brand, right, you do have to run ads because your competitors are running ads. So if someone is searching for like vacuum cleaners and you're a vacuum cleaner brand, and your competitors, if they run ads and when people search a vacuum cleaner, of course they're going to come up and you're not, you're already, it's a losing battle in that sense of getting new customers, because they're doing it, so you have to do it. I mean, to use a really loose analogy or metaphor in a way to really compare this to, is that, I don't know, let's take like Europe, like thousands of years ago, where there was a lot of different kingdoms and society states where it was, I don't know, it existed in some capacity, I'm sure, where you had to defend your kingdom, right? Or like civilization, because if you didn't want to fight, or you didn't care about war, but if you didn't have any defenses, then people could just come and overrun your society or kingdom. But by having a defense, it could be guards, it could be a moat, I don't know what it is, you're at least giving yourself and you're not dealing with it, right? Like if you run a kingdom, and you may not, and you're not very bloodlust or bloodthirsty, you want to have people who defend the kingdom, take care of that, because you want to focus on growing the society. So I almost see ads as that defense of just the thing you have to do to kind of keep yourself competitive and existing within the space. But then you can focus on infrastructure, culture, which I would translate this metaphor to loyalty, CRO, customer experience. Those are things that the people that run a society want to focus on. The defense aspect is just a necessary evil they have to partake in. So that is how...
This is a very interesting analogy. I like it. It's making me want to play Civilization 4.
Right. So I think the analogy works, convoluted as it might be, but I think that's really where it is, because you mentioned fun, and a lot of brand owners, they do have fun with their brand. It's their life, so they have to enjoy it. So they want to focus on the things that are really more enjoyable. And for most people, I don't see ads being the thing a brand owner really likes doing. I can see, customer experience, which I think we can shift into. I think that's probably what brand owners actually care more about and have a lot of fun with, which in turn does have actual positive effects on how well a brand does.
One brand that I think that you just reminded me of that I think does this really well, and I don't know what they're doing when it comes to Facebook ads or social media ads and things like that, but I do know that they are really focused on customer experience, loyalty, and also just organic reach. And their Instagram is amazing. They put out amazing content. It's a brand called Midday Squares. They make a healthier, all natural chocolate protein bar. It's plant-based, 100% organic. And they're killing it when it comes to content. Their Instagram is it's the 3 founders just filming and doing fun stuff. And you can't make these an ad. You can't use that content for an ad. You 100% have to be organic with it. And they're not just showing images of how cool their product looks or what it's made of. Their entire Instagram is them filming a behind the scenes video, and them just doing photo shoots with them just doing funky stuff. It's really cool. I definitely urge everyone to check out Midday Squares. If you're a CPG brand or any brand in general that's looking to really step up your organic social content, definitely check them out. And they're very active on LinkedIn too. One of the founders is always posting on there about the business side, and they treat Instagram more like just that fun side. And you could have fun with I don't want to take that away. You could have fun with running ads on like Facebook and Instagram, because there's some that could go viral, there's some that could be, but most of the time you're going to have more interesting content on your organic social channels. So that like you said, it's kind of that necessary thing that you have to do to obtain new customers. And, no one's pulling their entire budgets, but I do see there being a bit of a shift. And that's where we are now. Imagine where we are 3 to 5 years from now and where it's going to be. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
It's also because it's not as easy anymore. And I think that's why, that's, and I think, we can start shifting into customer experience here. But back, I want to say at the very least a year or two ago, it was so easy to generate traffic to your website and gain revenue from there, because with a lot of these platforms you could just, I think Facebook especially, they had a very hands-off approach where you could just set up an ad and their algorithm would be good enough to target the people that you would need to receive, and so you didn't have to focus on other things as good as they are. The customer experience is important, but when it's not the thing that is driving growth, you're going to naturally focus less on it because people are going to follow where the money is. But the effectiveness, the competitiveness of paid media is so much more to a point now where I think it is forcing people to focus on customer experience, but forcing not so much the right word. It's allowing them, I think, to be open more to the idea that it's an important aspect, because I think it's like a given. It's like, oh, of course, like customer experience is like a good thing, but I think a lot of brands now having to focus on it, they're seeing the importance of what it can actually do for your brand overall. Yeah. I mean, I'll cite. I don't know anything about this brand other than I'm assuming they sell blankets, but I think it's called like Hush Blankets, I think is the name of the brand. And I always see on LinkedIn their founder, whether that's true or not, they say that they spend a good amount of their day reading and responding to reviews on their site, on Amazon, and that helps the founder get a really good idea of what people love about the brand, what the brand could do better, and that's helped inform, the types of decisions they make when it comes to, it could be like policies or information you put on your site. And that's like a good example of customer experience that's not very difficult. I mean, it is time consuming. You can't, depending on how big your brand is, you can't read every product review, but doing something as simply as hearing what people say and just responding to them and making decisions in the future as a result of what they say, that's like a really easy thing that anyone can do if they just cut out or if they just set aside 30 minutes of their day to do that.
I do think, and that's something that you can task like an employee at your company with, aggregating that. And I'm sure there's also tools where you could put all of that text into and pull out like a word cloud and just kind of see what terms people are focusing on, and then being able to say, well, that's where we need to shift our attention. So I think that's a genius idea. And someone asked me a question, because I posted something else on LinkedIn today about just providing a better customer experience across the board, and a few other things. But someone asked me how you would audit and what KPIs you're looking at when looking at customer experience. And I think it's really important to understand that user experience is part of customer experience. It falls underneath that umbrella, right? User experience falls underneath that umbrella. But with user experience and with looking at conversion rate, you're able to look at analytics and data and things like that. When it comes to like customer experience, like looking at the bigger picture, you can't always look at the numbers. You can't always look at analytics. And to your point, not all brands, that approach that you just recommended, looking at the comments, perhaps that's not right for all brands.
No.
So like when you're doing like a CX audit, or you're really trying to look at your brand, or what we might do for one of our clients, you have to take more of a holistic and kind of unique approach and understanding who the brand is, trying to understand their customers, seeing the feedback that you're getting from the customers, and know that you kind of have to shift and move, and you have to give people what they want. And it's not just customer service, that's part of it. It's shipping, it's returns, it's the communications, it's the content that you're putting out there, it's the emails that they're getting. For example, like one idea I saw recently was how some brands are doing some unique abandoned cart emails. Like instead of just saying, hey, you left this in your cart, or check out now for 10%, they reworded a bit differently where it's almost like, hey, great news, 10% off this item. And it was the item that you looked at. So it doesn't feel like an abandoned cart email. That's a better customer experience. Like even if it's just tweaking the copy a bit. And I always use this, and this is similar to the blanket example you just gave, but Glossier, I believe it's them, or it might be another brand, but I'm almost certain it's them. And I'm sure other skincare brands and other CPG and other types of brands do this as well, but theirs stood out to me, where I believe they have a Slack channel where they invite some VIP customers who've been using their product for a long time or buy their product very frequently, and they ask them questions and get feedback from them. That is something that's so easy to do, where you can invite some of your loyal customers, or even if it's newer customers, doesn't matter, to give you feedback, or even reach out to the ones that are leaving reviews, good reviews, bad reviews, offer them some sort of discount or VIP coupon code or something like that. Throw them on a Slack channel, invite them, and ask them questions, send out polls there, get feedback from them, run product by them, run marketing ideas by them. They're willing to give you that feedback. In exchange, you're gaining some more loyal customers, and you're understanding how to optimize your customer experience more. So there's a lot of different things, and when it comes to customer experience, you have to be a little bit more hands-on. You can't just throw a piece of technology on it. Although there are some technologies that help with that, things like Gorgeous or Hero, and just providing more of I wouldn't say white glove, but a more personal and one-on-one experience is super important.
In the same way with like user experience, because there are some things, and I think especially on like the customer service side, where you can probably measure customer experience to a point, because let's say a big pain point for your brand internally is number of CS tickets, like customer service tickets. And technically, by having a reduction of customer service tickets, you can extrapolate that to mean delivering a better either UX or CX on your website, depending on what the pain point is overall. But it's not like you can download or buy like a tool that says, oh, you've increased the customer or user experience of your website by 30%. Of course, you can measure how, let's take like customer acquisition cost. You can very easily measure the percentage that you reduced your customer acquisition cost by, but you can't do the same thing for customer experience. But what I will say is, and something that's really easy that a brand could do right now is, that's something that you just mentioned, John, is policies. Take a look at the policies you have relating to your products or brand, and think about it in terms of how much friction these policies could create for your customers, and then think about, why the parts of the policies that do create friction, think about why they're that way and if it really needs to be as such. So, let's take a clothing brand, for example. And let's say this brand, they have a policy of, no returns, like no returns outright, like all sales are final for any product, regardless if it's a brand new product, a sale product, returned in its original condition, unworn. Let's say they just have a flat out no return, no refund policy. Now, is that obviously that is a policy that has a lot of potential to create friction. And, think about why. Now, the first why, and let's assume it is a typical clothing brand. Let's say it's not that because, for example, if you were a really small brand making handmade sweaters, like that obviously makes sense because each sweater is made to order, and it's not like if someone wants to return a sweater, it's hard to do that because that sweater was made for that person specifically. But let's remove that. Let's just say it's like a standard clothing brand. Think about, well, why aren't you taking returns? It's like, well, we lose if we get returns, like we have to give a refund and we lose money by that. Well, sure, but is there any other reason? And if there really isn't, because let's say it's a shirt, right? The brand can resell that shirt, I'm sure, or they can do something with it, depending on like the condition, especially if it's an unworn shirt, right? Because if it's an unworn shirt, of course the brand could like add that back into their inventory. But if it was worn, I kind of get why they couldn't. But usually a lot of brands will wash it or fabricate it or do something to it before putting it back in its queue. But if really there's no good reason you can't have like a no refund or no return policy, then you might consider, hey, no returns past 30 days. That's more reasonable. Does that still have the possibility of creating friction? Of course, because it's still no refunds after a certain point of time. But you're being more lenient and you're reducing the potential for friction because 30 days is a good amount of time for a person to evaluate if something fit, if they liked it. That gives a user plenty of time to make that decision. So that's probably something you'd want to update your policy right away with. But if you're a snack or beverage brand, of course you can't take returns on a snack item that is
or
sold.
Underwear.
Or underwear, sure. I mean, there's like products that you can't. And that's why I think, again, it's important to understand what your product vertical is. But if there's no good, but if you're looking at your policies and you're finding that with these friction points, there's no good reason you couldn't update your policies to be more customer friendly or focused, then you might want to reconsider doing that, especially if you do talk to your customer service team and they tell you that the number one complaint people are saying to them on social, wherever, is that, I hate that this brand doesn't accept returns. There's like no reason for it. Like I would, even if they gave me store credit, that would be fine. I would just buy something else because I like the brand. But if you're that inflexible with your policies and there's no good reason for it, people are going to pick up on that and they're going to be like, well, I don't understand why this brand is the way it is, and they clearly don't have the consumer in mind.
No, 100%. And that's all important things, and that kind of goes back to like you can't just focus on one thing. You have to kind of look at every little aspect of it and prioritize. A lot of these brands might be smaller, or even the brands that are mid-market brands. We're finding that even the larger brands with the funds don't have enough team members to support what they're trying to do, and that's where agencies like us might come into play to help take that off them so they can focus on some of those things about growing their brand. So we touched on PPC, we touched on customer experience. I think these kind of that does go into conversion rate optimization, because I do think that those customer experience is kind of part of that. Or no, it's not like
they're all, honestly, everything.
It's all related.
Everything besides PPC, like customer experience, loyalty, retention, CRO, they're all focused on maintaining the customer relationship. I mean, CRO can be a tool that benefits people brought in through paid media, but you can still optimize your experience overall. So I think it has sort of a dual.
Yeah, and I put personalization in the CRO bucket.
Yeah, it counts.
Yeah, especially with our CRO program, the strategy that we offer, like personalization is a large part of that. So whether you're A/B testing or whether you're personalizing content or personalizing product recommendations, like that, I see being all CRO, because, and then there's also user experience things that fall within CRO, and sometimes you might want to test the customer experience in a way. Maybe you're testing shipping rates, or maybe you're testing something to do with customer service, or even if you could even A/B test different types of tools. Like, if let's say you're using a headless approach, you could A/B test two API endpoints and use two different things for your back office technology. So like you could go really deep with CRO where it does bleed into customer experience a lot. But this is something that we've been putting a lot more focus on over the past 6 months, which is Growth X, which is our CRO program, and really trying to be a lot more intentional with it and focusing on A/B testing and product recommendations, using tools like dynamic yield and OmniConvert and a handful of others. So I do think there's some of the higher end options that are out there for brands. Like dynamic yield is not cheap. Nosto is not cheap, but it's maybe a bit more affordable. And then there's others that are far more affordable that you can run A/B tests on. You can personalize content. You can look at your analytics and be able to make decisions there. But that's also very time consuming. It's very time consuming. And a lot of brands don't have, other than running some A/B tests, a lot of brands they don't have the internal staff to focus on just CRO. It either falls on like some other employee at the company or they're using an external agency. But that's where a lot of brands are going to see like a straight up ROI. Of course, focusing on customer experience, improving that wherever you can, improving, if you are doing paid social, paid search, which I'm assuming most brands are, making sure that your site is well optimized, because that's what's going to actually reduce your customer acquisition cost. If you're driving traffic to your site, you have to be optimized for conversions and you have to be A/B testing, and that's where you're going to figure out where your sales are coming through. So I do think CRO is something that's going to continuously be and consistently be something that is important for brands, especially after they reach a certain mark. Maybe it's not a high priority for brands that are just starting, but as you grow and as you're trying to go to that next level, and where a 0.03 increase in conversions could mean hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, that's where there needs to be an investment there.
Yeah, because CRO is really like a new frontier for e-commerce brands. Like apps, apps in like the B2B industry, they've been using CRO for years, because, for those tools, right? Where if you're a brand, and I guess, Avex is technically a B2B company in some respect, because we work with other businesses, but, when the conversion was, leads, calls, quote requests, a lot of those companies leverage that type of service very readily. And they've been doing that for years. For e-commerce brands, like I said, it is a newer frontier, because as the effectiveness of things like paid media decrease, there's got to be other opportunities to focus on to increase revenue. Again, people follow the money, and if they're not getting the results they want from an avenue, they're going to seek other opportunity areas, and exactly correct. Whereas, the amount of new customers that are coming in are, like less and less through like paid channels. You're going to want to make sure you're optimizing that experience, not only for those users, but for anyone that's coming to your site. Because I think a lot of brand owners, they understand the word conversion optimization, or they've heard of it. They don't really know everything that goes into it in regards to these platforms, the experiences that you can run, the overall work involved. And I think what people do understand is the potential for these really quick wins. I mean, personalization, right? If you can identify who your customers are and you create segments for them, whether it be based on gender, spending behavior, location, and it's as simple as, hey, show these products for this type of people, and it'll happen pretty much automatically as soon as it's set up, assuming the quality of your segments and the quality of the experience that you're creating is as well. You run it, and you don't have to manually think about, how am I serving all of our different customers? You plan that out beforehand, you kind of set it up, and then you let it run, and the experience will tailor itself to the user after doing a lot of that upfront work. And I think that's very attractive to brand owners, because it's delivering personalization in a way that is in some ways automatic once the work is being done. And I think from the conversations that we've had, especially since I've been here, I feel like more brands are aware of what CRO is. And I think that's just a very fortunate thing for the e-commerce field overall, is that it's going to be more at the forefront over time. So I know you posed like, if you'd see the same results 2 to 3 years from now. And to be fair, we have no idea what the future is going to be, because 2 or 3 years ago from right now, actually, I think TikTok may have existed. It was probably Musical.ly at that point, but no brand would say that, yeah, we're focusing a lot on like Musical.ly content. Not at all.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you asked, actually, I wonder if you put that on your list, like, hey, are you focusing on TikTok? Depending on the brand, I'm sure a lot of them would say yes. And that does fall into influencer marketing, but that's why I think conversion rate is where it is. And I think that number will probably increase over time.
Well, I do think that, and that will lead us to the winner in this poll, which was loyalty and retention. I think that, things like growing your organic channels, like using TikTok or Instagram, or, some of the other channels that are out there, and creating really great content is kind of part of retention and loyalty. Because if you're able to build a community, have a platform to be able to speak from, if you're creating great products, if you're providing a great customer experience, if you're optimizing your site for conversions, optimizing it for user experience, that's going to lead to retention, and it's going to lead to loyalty. And I guess there's different definitions of loyalty. And you have your, raging fans who are going to sing your praise, and that's the real goal, right? You want to be able to have customers who are going to sing your praises in word of mouth. But I think looping in, and I would have been, like I said before, I would have been interested to have another one in there for influencer marketing, because I don't see that being like paid social piece, paid search. I see that being something different. And I do think with platforms like Grin and some others that are out there, those are growing, and people are putting more dollars into that. Like, if I was going to start a brand right now, I would put the least amount into paid social and paid search. I'd probably put nothing into paid search, maybe some retargeting. I would put most of that into influencers. Like, influencers would be the highest priority right now, because if you don't have any reach whatsoever, you should leverage someone else's platform. That's really where you're going to drive some kind of PR and some traffic to your site. So I do think influencers are really important, especially in the early stages, or using someone else's platform. And then building that community. You want people to spread your product word of mouth, people to sign up for subscriptions. It's not just about giving them loyalty points. It's about creating that type of brand and focusing on branding that is going to make people huge fans. Like, look at Apple and their products. Like, people are diehard Apple fans, or they're diehard, Android fans. Like, there's, they created their own enemies. They created like kind of that good and evil type of mentality between like either them or Android, them and Microsoft. So you have people who are like hardcore fans. I'm a huge fan of certain brands, and I'm loyal to certain brands. But and even certain outside of like e-commerce brands, like where I might order food from on Grubhub or something. If someone screws up, and my wife is really like really strict with this. If someone screws up her order, like, we can't order from them for like 6 months. And I'm like, sometimes it's like a place I really like. I'm like, they screwed up her order, and like now they're like blacklisted for like 6 months. So like little things like that matter. So you could do 99 things right, but that one thing that you do wrong out of 100 could have a huge impact, and you could lose a customer. So that all of those things kind of play together: customer experience, optimizing for conversions, user experience. That's going to lead to loyalty. That's going to lead to retention. Email marketing, bringing people back to your site. SMS, really big, really huge, needs to be on your list of things. And I think, to me, out of all those things, I do think that PPC and paid social just is like the least fun and is on the bottom. But I could be wrong, and I'm sure brands are still making millions of dollars off of those campaigns. Of course they are. But I just don't see it being like the only thing in your toolbox, whereas a couple years ago, you could launch a drop shipping company or like any brand and just put a ton of money towards Facebook and you could be killing it. Where I don't think you could do that as much now.
Yeah, what I will contribute to that, because I feel like the general benefit of loyalty and retention, I feel like you've covered the general, benefits of why to focus on it. But the other really powerful thing about having a lot of brand loyalty and affinity is where purchases are going to be less practical and more emotional, and there are certain reasons why that's beneficial, especially financially. So you ever heard of a brand called Bala?
Bala? No, I don't think so.
So they started, so they're basically these like weighted bracelets that people, they're very like aesthetically pleasing, and that's like the huge value prop of like their branding. Okay. Is that it's basically like it's not really like fitness. It's not really fitness equipment, but they have like 1 pound, 2 pound weighted bracelets. They have like this big ring that's like the Bala ring.
Okay.
And again, the whole point is it's like fitness equipment that you'll want to display out because it's very aesthetically pleasing. Now, the cost of these things, right, is, if I believe, right, and I could be wrong about literally because I'm not looking at the prices right now, but if you wanted a pair of 1 pound bracelets,
yeah,
and again, they're just 1 pound, I think that's like $50.
You're right. I just looked it up. We have computers in front of us. We could look things up on the podcast.
Is it $50?
$49.
Is it per bracelet or is it for 2 bracelets?
Let's see. Bandier has it on their site right now, and it is $49. Bala 1 pound weight. It looks like it's 2. They're showing a picture. Sold as a set. Yes, there's 2. So,
as someone who's really big into fitness, who has spent a lot of money on fitness equipment, I already know that I'm not the demographic for this whatsoever. So, but $50 for like 1 pound, for like 1 pound bracelets, you can go to like Modell's, and you can buy like 1 pound like wrist wraps for probably like $15. Yeah.
The 2 pound one is $65,
which again is a lot, and they're huge. They have a huge following. Their content is very aesthetically pleasing. They have like a really great mission related to like working out for yourself and for any body type, and they even have like these special workouts that use this equipment. Like, they have a great community. They're a perfect example of a brand that's really built up loyalty and a following through their content and mission. But I saw this like new product they have, and this is where I'm getting to the point of what I'm trying to say. It's a 15 pound bar that you can do, it's like it's the equivalent to like an easy bar. Yeah. But it's 15 pounds. It costs over $100 for a 15 pound bar that you can't really add anything else to. I mean, maybe they have like weight plates for it. I don't remember, but that's a lot of money for what's basically a 15 pound bar. The easy bar that I have at home cost me $30. Yeah.
It's an easy bar shape. And
it is.
But it's just the bar. You can't put plates on it.
No, you can't put anything on it. For $100, that's a lot. Again,
they look cool. They look really cool.
The functional utility of these products for its value is awful. Like, if you get what I mean. Like, the price you're paying for the utility you're getting out of it is terrible. But the people that love Bala and the people that are buying it, they're not thinking practically like that. Because if I went into AliExpress and you could find these bracelets, these knockoffs of these bracelets for like $5, because their brand is pretty big and has a huge following. Any new product they make, and I think this bar is like a newer product of theirs, people probably buy it because they're like, oh, I love Bala, it's part of my aesthetic, I love like the brand and their set, and it's part of their identity. I mean, I don't mean to like trash talk this brand, because I follow them on social and I like their brand as a brand, maybe not their products. But I could have easily said Apple, because everyone knows Apple's prices are not well reflected on the quality of their products in a utility sense. Because thinking about functionality and utility, the dollar per, I guess, usefulness is a lot less than getting a PC. In the same way that buying traditional fitness equipment versus Bala, you're getting more utility for a better price. Because I bought a 45-pound barbell with 300 pounds worth of different plates for $300, or I could spend that same amount to get 3 15-pound bars. And that's just who I am as a person. But if your brand is big enough and you have a big enough following, you don't always think by the practicality of this. And you do see this a lot with like streetwear, where the price of clothing, let's be real, is a lot more than it probably needs to be.
Yeah, and looking at this, like looking at their Instagram and their branding and their product design, it's all about like a lifestyle. Yeah. It's all about, and their consumer is not the seasoned professional, like a seasoned lifter or like someone, because like you're not going to get much out of a 15-pound bar. No. Like you're going to get tired with that real soon. Whether you're male or female, like you're going to want to like. So I think this is something like it's a unique idea because it's looping in almost like fashion and lifestyle into like a fitness product, but like also comparing it to like a Peloton or something. Like Pelotons are not cheap; they're super, but the quality is amazing and the technology is amazing, and that to me is different. To me, this seems does this brand have, and I don't know why we're bashing on Bala. I mean, it just,
I'm not bashing on it. I'm just stating. I'm just stating like a pure fact about that.
Yeah, it's a pure fact. Like I don't see that. Like, do they have longevity? Because like, yeah, that's a cool lifestyle brand, but like first of all, you buy that bar once. They have to keep making new products.
Yes.
So I do think that they have to eventually come up with an innovative product that's going to be different from a fitness perspective, because like these people are going to get tired of those things really quickly from on the fitness side of it. When I say tired, I mean you're going to max out its capabilities really quickly.
Like they're a great brand for acquisition, but if you think about retention, there's almost like a ceiling that they're going to eventually hit unless they keep making more things.
Yeah, but it's cool. I like their branding. I like their product, the look of the product. It looks cool. But I hear you. It seems to be really high priced.
The more that you can use emotion, the more that people are buying your brand based off emotion and like affinity, it just shows the overall the strength of your brand, whether you're doing this for financial benefit or not. Everyone's launching a business for that, but like whether your prices are the way they are out of the intention behind them. I'll just keep using Apple from now on, and I'm pretty much done with this point. But Apple's like the perfect really example of this. No one's buying Apple because it is the functionally superior product in personal computing. They buy it because, the same could be said for the iPhone. Although I will say the iPhone is probably the best smartphone that exists because of how easy it is to use, which is a utility. Mm-hmm. People buy off emotion, and if your brand is strong enough and you're building up a loyal following, people are going to be more willing to give you money for your brand, and they're not going to think about your competitors as much, because the less people care about your products compared to others, the stronger your brand is. Because the new iPhone that comes out, no one evaluates, the new iPhone is this price. I wonder how expensive the Pixel is, and does it have better features? Most iPhone users don't care about that. They're never going to make that comparison. Product, yeah. They're just going to get the new iPhone because it's iPhone. So
yeah. Well, that's also creating, they created, they align themselves with their products with what people aspire to be, whether it's, a creator, or it's the anti this or the anti that. So there's, Apple has done a great job with that. It's hard to compare a lot of brands to Apple, but great use case there. But I think we touched on pretty much all of these aspects. Just to kind of recap, more and more brands focusing on customer experience, CRO, conversion rate optimization. Most importantly, loyalty and retention. You're going to get that's going to pay dividends for much longer.
Yep.
Whereas PPC, paid social, totally still part of what you should be doing, not saying you shouldn't be, but it seems to be less and less of a higher priority for certain brands depending on their level. So
yeah.
I'm going to send out some maybe another poll or two to get some insights on influencer marketing, and maybe we'll collaborate on one, David, if you have some
I'd like
ideas.
to do another one of these because these are fun, because we're talking not just based on our opinion, but like our reactions to things real people are actually saying. So
for sure.
Yeah.
All right, till next time. Got some guests coming on soon. I believe Gerard from Postscript is coming on in another week or two, and we have a few other guests, I think, from Site. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.